inaugural event of our 2023 spring semester lifelong learning experience. It's proudly put on by our college's Office of Alumni Affairs and Development in partnership with the college's Business of Sustainability theme and Cornell. I'm Andrew Caroli. I'm the Charles Field Knight Dean of the S.C. Johnson College of Business. You know, countries around the globe are grappling with persistent social, environmental, and economic challenges, including climate change, social environmental justice, and inequality. In the private sector, customers, employees, shareholders, and other stakeholders are challenging businesses to do more. So this panel, comprised of experienced executives and scholars from companies known for their sustainability initiatives, and our faculty expert, which you'll be hearing from, will delve into the challenges and opportunities in implementing sustainable business strategies. Now, before I introduce our distinguished panelists, let me mention that this event is being recorded and it will be viewable at this same URL afterwards. You might submit questions in the chat for those of you watching in real time, which you can open by clicking the dialog box at the top right of your video player. Throughout our discussion, we'll be sharing URLs and resources in the chat as well. So heads up, watch for those. And if you're watching the archive recording, those links are available in the overview section just below. So who do we have with us today? Ladies and gentlemen, Delfina Govia, 86, MBA 98. Del is the Chief Sustainability Officer of Fracht, FVO. Del serves as the Chief Sustainability Officer. It's a U.S. subsidiary of Switzerland's Fracht Group, and it focuses on directing stakeholder-driven programs in the North American market. Ms. Govia has 40 years of global experience in the energy industry, formerly Global Managing Director of Energy and Materials in the consulting practice within Cisco, and international strategy consultant with Capgemini, Ernst & Young, in their energy, chemicals, utilities, and even high-tech practices. Welcome, Del. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Milstein. Dr. Milstein is my colleague here at Cornell, clinical professor of management and director of our Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise at the Samuel Curtis Johnson Graduate School of Management at Cornell. He conducts applied research and oversees this vital center's work on market and enterprise creation, business development, clean technology, commercialization, and also sustainable finance. So welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Andrew.
And last but not least, William Restrepo, 80, MBA 85. He's the Chief Financial Officer of Neighbor Industries. William serves as the CFO. In this role, he has oversight for global finance and auditing, as well as treasury, tax, internal audit, risk management functions, as well as all overseeing supply chain groups. He works closely with Neighbor's strategy, corporate development, and investor relations initiatives. Welcome, William. Great to have you all three here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I know you're going to enjoy this. So we're going to start with you, Del. First question to you. We have seen a skyrocketing increase in the number of chief sustainability officers all around the world. According to a Reuters study that I was looking at last month, 28% of all public companies in 2021 have a C-suite appointee or direct report focused on sustainability. So the role is obviously about prioritizing sustainability initiatives inside companies, how they should get behind this, the criteria, the constraints. So here's my question to you for all of those listening in. It would be wonderful if you could describe your career path, your journey to from oil and gas and consulting to your current role as a CSO at Fracht. I'd love for you to represent for us what's top of mind for CSOs, not just at Fracht, but all around the world. And maybe offer some perspectives on some of the key things people are focusing on and some of the big challenges that are out there.
Okay, that's a tall order. I'll try to I'll try to keep my comments as concise as possible, and then people could ask questions later on in the Q&A session. My journey, as you mentioned, 43 years in the oil industry, and how does that translate into today? One of the things that that most people don't know is because we get beat up so much in the oil industry. We're kind of the evil empire and beat up for all sorts of ESG related topics, is that we have always been incredibly dedicated to the environment and to our social behaviors, especially when we are working in countries around the world. We don't just go in to some foreign country and pull oil out. We go in and we provide social programs for the local communities. We have always been, especially in this part of the world, very focused on the environment. And I'm so pleased to have my colleague, William Restrepo, here with a very well-recognized drilling company, oilfield services company, here to provide some input as well. So I have been working on topics of sustainability my entire career. Most recently, in the last 7 years as a partner in a consulting firm, I built the ESG and sustainability practice and started working with companies in that regard and talking to them about what they needed to do specifically in today's environment. And it just so happened that a company that provides service into the oil industry, which is fracht, I was helping and talking, advising them to the point of, you guys really need a chief sustainability officer to bring all of this together, because they were so passionate about it. And it was kind of like, well, why don't you just come do it? And so what that afforded me was the opportunity to actually go and be on the front lines in an organization that is so passionate about this, to take this thing into the next level for them and also for the logistics industry. So that to me was so compelling. So I think the next question that you asked me was, what is top of mind for chief sustainability officers? So as you can imagine, in this role, I'm in communication with chief sustainability officers across many industries. And I can tell you that from what I'm observing, top of mind for them is, first of all, the issue of compliance and public perception, right? That is very important for organizations to be able to put their best foot forward and do it in a manner, and I'm going to use these words that people can take note of, and that is using metrics that matter. Metrics that matter. So being able to have science-based metrics that they can publish and show people that they really truly are achieving impactful goals against sustainability. I would say that also top of mind, and this folds into key things that they're focusing on, is innovation. How do we innovate? It's not just about, cutting here, cutting there. How do we do this in an innovative manner so that it really is achieving sustainable impact within organizations? Let me give you some examples. In the product space, companies that produce products, they're looking for ways to innovate how they actually produce their products to reduce waste, to reduce the amount of water consumption involved, to reduce the amount of non-green energy involved. And then they take it to working throughout their supply chains with their suppliers, people that are providing packaging for them. How do we reduce packaging? And how do we make that more sustainable? So driving innovation throughout the supply chain leads to another key area of impact, which is collaboration. So not just innovation, but innovation and collaboration in association with supply chain partners. And what do we, as the larger, more powerful organizations, do to help smaller companies participate?
Right. Fantastic. So this is about, so go ahead, keep going.
I was just going to say the one last thing that you asked me, and it's going to be very easy. You said, what are their biggest challenges?
Right.
Adoption. How do you get the hearts and minds of everybody in your organization, especially if you're big, bad, and global, especially if you're working in many different areas. And sometimes in some markets, you're struggling. How do you get everybody in the organization lined up and working towards integrated sustainability goals?
Right. Right. That's a really, really valuable message, Del. And I know we're going to come back to that as well. Speaking of hearts and minds, if we could turn to William next. So here's a sort of a paradoxical question that is often posed out there, and I'd love your take on it, William. So here's a question that people often ask. Should investors be actually supporting a company that's developing innovative solutions to climate change, even if that company is in the oil and gas industry and involved in basically carbon emissions? For many, that the market's answer has been a resounding no to this. And all you have to do is look at all the investment policies that are coming forward that exclude traditional oil producers from so-called sustainable funds. So there's recent research. I'm going to give a shout out to my colleague Lauren Cohen at Harvard that suggests that the most influential producers of green innovation technology is in fact the major energy producers. Their research suggests that it's 3 times the average firm in terms of innovative investment technology, in terms of green innovation, for climate change mitigation and adaptation. So what do you think about those findings, William? First of all, do they resonate? And the second question, I guess, from your perspective at Neighbors, is how do you think about the role that the energy industry plays in the whole physical transition away from fossil fuels? So, William, that's a lot.
Thanks, Steve. It's a lot to unpack there, but I can tell you that the results are encouraging and they match what I'm seeing generally. When I talk to a lot of investors, I mean, there's all kinds of investors. Some are totally passionate about climate and make a lot of the decisions based on climate objectives, and which doesn't really help oil and gas companies. But what I would say to a lot of them is that in reality, if you look forward, we are roughly at somewhere in 25 terawatts of grid generation today. That's a lot of power the world, the grid. By 2050, we expect to double that. So roughly, depending on which scenarios you look at, but the IEA is a pretty good one, we're going to be adding somewhere between 20 and 27 terawatts, right? There's various scenarios, obviously. There's a net zero scenario, but everybody knows that we're behind and likely we won't make it by 2050. But there's others like let's say the announced pledges of the governments and some of the actual policies that have been implemented, the STEP scenarios. So those assume that basically out of those 20 to 27 terawatts that we're going to be adding to world generation capacity, somewhere in the range of 40 to 20 will come to renewables. That is remarkable. But what does that mean? That means that we'll still be in 2050 consuming a lot of hydrocarbons, right? Now, it won't be the same way that we're consuming them today. There will be a lot more control of the emissions. All of the companies are spending a lot of money in making sure they clean up their own footprint. Not only oil companies, but also all the industrial companies. And there will be more ways of making sure that whatever hydrocarbons are being used more responsibly. But the reality is that hydrocarbons will be around. They'll be critical to help people come out of poverty across the world. We need affordable, abundant energy to continue and finishing the job of bringing people out of poverty. So that's going to happen. Whatever people think, we're still going to have a lot of hydrocarbons in the future. Do we want to starve these companies of resources? I don't think that's the best thing for humanity, but those are some of the debates that are going on. But going beyond that, I think what's really important is that a lot of the energy companies have a lot of competencies internally. To give you an example, in Neighbors, we have software, robotics, we have infrastructure, understanding infrastructure, understanding of projects, developing major projects across the world. And all these new companies that are starting to go along their path to commercial success need all these competencies, as well as their contacts with people like Aramco and some of the other big players that are investing heavily into the energy transition world. So leaning on companies that have these competencies, like the energy companies, is going to be what's going to help these companies achieve success. And finally, there's a lot of cash that we as oil and gas companies, I mean, in our case, we're just a supplier to those oil and gas companies, a lot of cash that's being generated that has no logical home, because our investors don't really want us to expand the footprint materially in oil and gas. So we're going to have a lot of cash available, and we can either give it to shareholders or use our competencies to help some of these companies develop. So do we want to starve these companies of the cash flow? I don't think that's a wise thing to do. So I would say to investors, we're going to be part of the background. We're going to be producing more responsibly over the years to come, and making sure that hydrocarbons don't contribute to the carbon emissions problems that we're facing. And we're going to be funding and helping these companies develop. So we're going to be a critical piece of achieving net zero sometime in the future.
Yeah, that's consistent with the findings and the whole perspective. I don't know, Adele, you're nodding your head, and I don't know if you want to add anything to William's comments.
Beautifully said, William.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So well, let's turn to Mark. So this is interesting. Mark, last week, as you know, we all know in the Cornell community, the Financial Times 2023 Global MBA rankings were released. Yes, the Johnson School MBA program did very well in the rankings. And what's interesting to me as a dean that's part of this college, watching and dissecting these, is the dimensions on which we did very well. Alumni engagement, of course, is critical, and we did very, very well on that front. But the editors of this ranking system specifically called out the Johnson MBA program and the Johnson School as the quote unquote it school on sustainability. And it sounds like that's a nice thing to be recognized for, to be the it school. But the irony, and I know you and I both know this, we have been very much focused on for a long time, Mark. So tell us, how did we get to where we are as a school in this sustainability space? And I know you want to talk about the new business of sustainability theme that you co-lead on behalf of our college. And so why don't we start there? Yeah. And we'll talk about that. And just so, how do we get to where we are and where are we going?
Well, I love the question. That the ranking, it was funny to see us named as the IT school. I'm paraphrasing. The first thing that jumped into my mind was LL Cool J. Don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years. So our alumni will know that Johnson's always been strong in sustainability. If you go back into the late 90s, when World Resources Institute and Aspen's Business and Society program were doing a ranking of sustainability and top management programs, Johnson was in the top tier. And then in the early 2000s, we dropped a tier. And the late Sam Johnson, that was unacceptable to him. He didn't want the school that had his family's namesake on it to be second in an area that he felt was going to be of critical importance to the business community going forward. And so we were lucky from a structural standpoint that Sam made a gift to Johnson to ensure we had faculty. So we had a faculty base here. And also to ensure that we had some seed money to establish the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise. And that's allowed us then to focus on content. And the content around business and sustainability. I think one of the reasons we've had success for so long One is that we've hewed very closely to trying to answer the question and generate knowledge around the question of what's the private sector's unique role to play in addressing social and environmental issues. Not unilateral role, but the unique contribution that the private sector can make. And then when you look at what our programming has been about, whether it's the research that we do, the teaching, the curriculum we offer, or the engagement that we do through events and conferences and the like, is really two things. One is to center on the factors that generate organizational value over time, and to think about what that means. What does good business decision making mean in the context of sustainability? And what does sustainability mean in the context of strategic competition in the marketplace? That's one piece of content. The other piece of content, and I think Del really touched on this, or reflects what Del was talking about from the private sector perspective. You look at what companies have been doing, programs, activities, initiatives, investments in sustainability over the last 30 years. And there are those that look at sustainability as a compliance issue. There are those that look at sustainability more as a perceptual and communications issue. And there's those that are looking at sustainability as a new business opportunity. It's rooted in innovation and entrepreneurship. And we've stuck close to that over the years, and I think that's what's put us in the leadership position for so long. And it's of course nice to be continuously recognized for that, even in 2023. I think to the other thing that you raised, the new business of sustainability interdisciplinary theme that we established in the college last year. Really excited about that. Andrew, you know how many faculty we have at the college. It's what, north of 220?
245, going on 255, 260. Yeah.
All right. We have 150 faculty that are affiliated with that theme. That means these are faculty either currently engaged in or looking to engage in research, teaching, and engagement related to sustainability. And it shows you the importance that people have, the importance people are placing on the issue on a personal level, where they want to put their time and attention. It reflects what our students are really interested in. It reflects what our alumni say that they're dealing with in the marketplace, and what other professionals are coming to the college and telling us the issues that they're trying to understand. And so what's nice about the theme is not just being able to identify the faculty we've already got. It gives us a platform on which to grow and to think through. It's nice to be in a leadership position, but to think through as this space changes over time. And it's nice to have so many people in the world now talking about sustainability in its different forms, whether you're talking about circularity, you're talking about climate change, you're talking about ESG. There's a lot of people coming to this space, but the knowledge, the history of where we've been, what we know, what we still need to figure out collectively in order to move ourselves forward and to achieve progress, that's something the theme gives us the opportunity to really orient ourselves around, so that we can think through what are the topics that we research that are going to be impactful for practice. How are we going to move our knowledge base forward? On the curriculum, how are we preparing students, whether they're residential students, whether they're remote students, whether they're executive or online students? And then engagement. It's easy to put on a conference. That doesn't take much. It's harder to put on a conference that actually says something and focuses on the critical questions that are in the marketplace now, and helping people work through the nuance of those questions and how you answer them in a critical, strategic way.
Yeah, fantastic. You know, ladies and gentlemen listening out there, we've got questions just pouring in, and I'm really, really grateful. Now, one thing that we as a team really wanted to talk about was, before we get to the questions, just one to sort of throw around the three of you here. This is something I know we care about and we each wanted to address, which is Mark's talking about the level of enthusiasm for incoming MBAs and professional students, and how immense that is, not just here at Cornell, but across the board. Thank goodness we're able to deliver. But some are saying that this is almost too late. We need to be advancing this topic of sustainability at a more accelerated pace with younger people. And I just thought, Del, maybe you could jump in here, offer some thoughts. William, quick take on that as well. Mark, Del, go first.
Short and sweet. I think that we need to start with the children. I think we need to start in kindergarten through 12th grade. And there are organizations that are out there. One very well recognized one is called CELF, C-E-L-F, Children's and Education Learning Foundation, that helps children in K through 12, helps teachers provide science-based programs that allow children to advance and know about this topic in a meaningful way.
Love it. Thank you for that plug. William, take on education.
I agree. We got to start people early, but also what I enjoy most is visiting universities and talking to students, and be it engineering, business students, and discovering the passion they have for sustainability and the topic of climate. It's inspiring. It recharges my batteries. And I think these are all people that are trying to find guidance on their careers. And I think, people in the industry or education or can really help them sharpen those thoughts and look for careers in energy transition. I think that's going to be the new tech over the next few years. I think a lot of opportunities and exciting jobs are going to be opening up. I just see it every day. I'm having companies come visit and tell them we're starting. We need help. We need to find people. We don't have people. So I think it's going to be a lot of exciting careers for people from at the university level, both undergraduate and graduate.
Fantastic. Mark, quick take on education, younger?
It's not going to surprise you given where I am in the education constellation, but I'm going to say that, in the last 30 years when I got into this, these issues were pressing, but the impacts were going to be 100 years from now. So nobody felt any sort of urgency. The scientific community is pretty clear. We have a rapidly closing window and a rapidly closing space in which we can make change. And so our university students and our existing executives, getting people up to speed so that they have the right critical and strategic tools and they're able to influence others and affect change. That's where I think the focus needs to be.
Yeah. It's also going to help with what Del was talking about, the paradox of changing hearts and minds, even in established organizations, because these young people are going to be putting pressure on these organizations to be re-gearing them, reorienting them towards these topics. We can't, before we get to the questions, we can't not talk about sort of the regulatory environment and how radically it's changing right now. So here's another question for you. We'll start with you, Del. We are seeing rapidly increasing pressures on mandating corporate disclosures on greenhouse gas emissions, scope 1, 2, 3, and lots of other sustainability linked data. You can rattle them off: European Sustainability Reporting Standards, ISSB, International Sustainability Standards Board. Here, stateside, of course, the Securities and Exchange Commission. All of these new frameworks for disclosure are going to drop this spring, early summer. Paint me a picture, Del, of what the world is going to look like in a few years' time with respect to sort of this new environmental disclosure framework for public and likely private companies at some point down the road.
Well, I'm going to start with the last thing that you said, which is private companies. Even though private companies may not be legally obligated to comply with whatever regulations come about, guess what? Our customers are. And so you must be prepared to be in line with your customers, because they need to have compliance and reporting, and you have to match up if you're within their supply chain. So right. That's got to happen. Then in general, I think that there's two ways to look at this. And that is, I can attest that the legal community is making money hands over fist. The auditors are going to be making money hands over fist, trying to figure out what we have to do. William's smiling. What actually has to be done so that we are reporting apples to apples. That's where the big challenge is right now. And that's where we as industry have to help the regulators in understanding. Just by saying that you must do this reporting does not mean that the way reporting is going to come out is going to be apples to apples. So that's one component is, yes, everybody's going to be rushing. The lawyers and the auditors are going to make a bunch of money. But the other side of this equation is what we're seeing out there is that we in industry are forming our own consortiums within different industries to decide what we have to do ahead of those regulations. So don't sit back and wait for the government to tell you what to do. You figure out internally what's going to make collaboratively, collectively, Mark said, that was a brilliant word, Mark. Collectively, what do we have to do to be able to get ahead of this?
I love that. I love the message there. William, do you want to add something to this? Just a picture. I mean, you're CFO of a public company here. You're facing up to this. I don't know how much you're comfortable commenting on it, but just paint us a picture of what we're going to see when it all shakes out.
I'm the last one that's going to criticize the accounting profession and some of stuff coming out of the SEC, particularly in a public forum, Dean. So, but what I can tell you is that everybody's struggling a little bit to see what we're going to put in the financial statements in terms of the impacts of climate change on your business. I mean, it's so uncertain and difficult to really quantify. And you really do want to have things that are quantifiable in your financial statements to help your investors assess what the risks and exposures are. But, we welcome government guidance. It's the only real valid guidance at the end of the day is what the government determines that the rules are going to be, because then we're going to have at some point apples to apples and everybody's in the same level playing field. We, in Neighbors, we've now invested in about nine different companies, including the most recent that was announced about a couple of weeks ago on concentrated solar. But we've invested in geothermal, energy storage like batteries, capacitors. And one of the ones that I'm most excited about is a company that is involved in emissions monitoring. They basically do it for the state of New York, the state of California. And it's a great company. It has cars with sensors that drive around the whole state and transmit the information up to a central command center. And basically, the regulators have a whole picture of what their state looks like on a real-time basis. So this company now, we are working with them actively to set up a joint venture to address the oil sector, the E&P companies' footprints. Basically, the basins where they're producing, where there's a lot of methane being emitted, the pipelines. So all the infrastructure where emissions could potentially be running without being identified. And we have everything from satellites to these cars driving around, identifying this. So this company is great, but what are we going to measure? What are the companies, what are their obligations in terms of reporting? Do they have to have a service that proactively measures this physically rather than theoretically? So these are some of the rules that we're looking for government to come and develop, because once that is done, I think a new amazing industry is going to develop around these rules and regulations. So we welcome it. We want the government to be an interested party and take also some leadership together with business to get these new policies and new disclosure regulations developed as quickly as possible. So the EPA is working on it. We expect to see something coming soon for the oil sector, and we're ready for it.
Okay. I was going to ask you, Mark, to talk a little bit about the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, and maybe talk about how there's some very, very big bill components there in the act that focus on simplifying rules for mobilizing private capital into green energy solutions. Can you give us a quick take? I'm guessing whatever you say will stimulate lots of questions in the audience, but not that we're short of them. I'm coming at you with some of those in a second here, ladies and gentlemen. Stay patient here. But Mark, the Inflation Reduction Act? quick take?
I'll make a quick comment on that so that you can get to the audience questions. But I think it was, maybe best summed up. We run, as you know, annual meeting in the fall called the Cornell Energy Connection, where we focus in on sustainability and energy issues, and really try to connect students with professionals in the energy sector writ large. And the way it was put by a panel this past November, when we were at the Cornell Tech campus in New York, was there's a lot of money. This is a great place to go, because you've got existing companies that are trying to figure out how to electrify and decarbonize their own operations. You've got companies that are trying to develop new technologies, all the things that I was talking about in the beginning, everything from risk and cost reduction to setting a new shared vision of a strategic opportunity in the marketplace that can then fuel innovation and repositioning by companies, from the new startups to the incumbent multinationals. And so you see just a tremendous amount of activity now across, not just in the energy and the utility sector, but all companies in manufacturing and services, really thinking through what's their unique role to play in decarbonization. How do we move there quickly?
Fantastic. Great reference there. Okay, so here we go. Are you ready? These are going to come at you fast. Del, you're going to get the first one. What advice do you have for experienced professionals who want to break into the sustainability field, especially those who don't have a specific background in sustainability, but have a strong interest in making a difference? I'd love your take on that.
What I would say, first of all, is don't cut yourself short. You probably, even though you may not have a specific sustainability component to your resume, I promise you that somewhere, somehow in the work that you've done, you will be able to go back and say, this is where sustainability, ESG, those types of things would have made a difference, or actually did make a difference, depending on your organization, for you to be able to understand or have at least an understanding that you're now taking to the table. From there, what I would suggest is there are wonderful programs out there for executive education, ongoing education. There are certificates that one could get, and listen closely to what William said, or replay what William said, is that because this topic is so at the forefront right now, we very much are looking for people to come into the industry. And I would also suggest that look into energy renewable companies. They are very much wanting to bring people into the fold and train them to work in this space. We are very much interested in people that want to make the change. Don't worry about it.
Right on. So I'm going to take the lead from there, Del, and tell the audience about an eCornell sustainability certificate that Mark Milstein is one of the co-instructors on. It's a multi-module certificate course that fits beautifully into what you just said, Del. eCornell, I'm sure we'll be happy with that plug, but I'm going to use this actually to plug something else I'm directly involved with. I'm the moderator here today, but I'm actually very actively involved in this space myself. And that is, I'm on the Global Advisory Council for something called Accounting for Sustainability, www.a4s.org. And if you check under there, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be in the show notes. You can find the link. There's something called the Academy, and they actually have training programs on what they call finance for the future. And it very much focuses on integrating sustainability issues for finance professionals into sort of the concepts of valuation, cost of capital, sourcing external financing, and all the contingencies and challenges and opportunities therein. So there's a plug for you. Okay, William, here's one question. Is increased nuclear power production helpful in efforts against climate change? I guess that's a yes or no question, but I guess maybe you want to add something to it. Nuclear power production.
I I would say the answer is clearly yes, but nuclear power does bring. It is a sticky subject, and I haven't seen many places in the world where nuclear power is welcomed by particularly the environmental groups. So I can only think of France, maybe. It's the only place where they've enthusiastically embraced nuclear power, and everywhere else that of all the countries they visit, it's been put on the back burner to the point that economically it's almost unfeasible to develop a project and get it out, and by the time you're done, your returns on capital are just horrendous. So yes, I mean, it could be something that helps with climate change, but there are other issues. I think over time technology will improve on the nuclear fusion side, and we will see things that maybe allay some of the concerns of the environmental groups that will make it more significant, but it'll take a while, I think.
Del, Mark, nuclear, any comments? Do you want to add anything?
Well, I did hire recently a nuclear engineer. And to William's point, it's a matter of the innovation and technology, and it has come a long way. So the nuclear power of today is not the nuclear power of my day, dating myself here, but where the public perception, to William's point, has not yet evolved with the evolution in the technology. And until we do a good job of public relations and education around that, right, it's, to William's point, it's not going to advance because the delays, the cost in the delays in getting projects off the ground make it economically infeasible.
Right.
And I'll add to that, which is, at the end of the day, like any technology that needs to go through development, commercialization, adoption, and diffusion, there's just there are problems associated with waste, and nobody wants to be near it. These are problems that need to get solved in some fundamental way before everything from politicians to local communities are going to feel comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah. You've got to be patient here. From a
climate change perspective, right? It's difficult to argue that it's not a good way to get away from carbon emissions. It's just got a lot of added baggage to it that's very difficult to unwind.
This next question is, I think, going back to a comment you made earlier, William. So we'll start with you. It says, what are your thoughts on due diligence when startups fail to show transparency when bidding for sustainability credentials? So it's sort of, I think, was tipped off by your comments about the corporate venture capital space in this area. So credentials, credentials, and maybe these young companies that are up and coming, just wanting to drive for profit. And yeah, there's a kind of greenwashing element to the question. I'm trying to add to the flavor of the question, but go ahead, William.
So somehow I think that startup venture capitals and profits don't belong in the same sentence. From my experience, it takes a while to get you to commercial success and a lot of patience from investors. But what I'm seeing, all the companies that are coming to me, I'm just seeing enthusiasm, idealism, wanting to change the world. I'm even seeing older guys in the financial field that are making a ton of money moving to these startups for basically free almost to help get them off the ground. So I'm not seeing the lack of transparency in this startup world. Yes, I'm seeing some traditionally oil and gas small companies that are trying to develop, and they're changing their tune and their message to claim they're somehow sustainable and renewable, when in fact they're not. It's just the same old company that is just changing its stripes a little bit to get some interest from investors. But in reality, I mean, I would advise students or young people that are starting in companies to really give a hard look at all these startups and get a couple of experiences in some of these startups. This is the most, invigorating and inspiring and fun place to be right now is right. These startups. And like I said, I see the greenwashing that I see, if you want to call it that, is more in the larger companies that are pressured by shareholders and regulatory agencies to do something. So there, some of these companies, I'm not saying all by any means, like somebody like Chevron invests $2 billion. That's not, I don't call that greenwashing. That is a very substantial investment, even for Chevron, right? So I think their efforts are honest. They're not greenwashing, but I do see some of the larger companies, based on pressure from shareholders and others, putting some lip service out there and a facade of somehow they're doing something, but they're not. But they're not really doing it. In the smaller companies, I don't see that as much.
Great. Hey, there's a really specific question here. I suspect it's from one of our Nolan Hotel School alumni, Mark, and I'm going to direct it to you, but I want to answer it. They're asking about whether we are actually co-sponsoring programs together with the Nolan Hotel School. And what I think they didn't realize is this business of sustainability theme is actually funded at the college level and is meant to integrate and bring together, build a community of faculty across all three schools, Dyson, Nolan, and Johnson, who have common research and teaching interests in this space, right? Do you want to comment on that? I could list off some of our distinguished faculty in the Nolan Hotel School who are part of that business of sustainability theme and involved in the programming, but I want you to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you're saying, there are faculty from all three schools that are part of this. Aaron, I'm thinking Aaron, Gene Varney,
Aaron Adalja, Gene Varney, Heather Kolakowski,
Helen Sean,
Elena Bellavina. I mean, yeah, these are all faculty actively involved. Yeah,
absolutely. And so that's, that's one component. The other component is there is actually work that's been going on at the hotel school at least since 2009, because I know I was involved back then in trying to develop more curriculum around this, but also Center for Hospitality Research, the Pillsbury Institute for Entrepreneurship, Hospitality Entrepreneurship.
Right.
There are annual roundtables that engage industry on the topic of sustainability. We have a program within the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise called the Sustainable Tourism Asset Management Program, which really bridges work over here at Johnson and work over at the hotel school, looking at trying to address the tension that exists between the rapidly growing tourism industry, pandemic aside, because it's coming back very quickly, and the issues around climate change and inequality and other sustainability related things. And we just launched. You mentioned earlier the certificate in sustainable business from Cornell. We just launched at the end of last year a new program in sustainable tourism asset management through Cornell. So there is actually a lot going on there. This is one of those challenges we have in the theme, is to make sure that the outside world, including our alumni, see it.
That's right. That's right. And that's what we're doing here together in launching this lifelong learning initiative focused on the business of sustainability, because it's so beautifully a fabric of all of our college, all three schools in our college. Thanks for that, Mark. Yeah. Great question, by the way, from our friend out there. So this is to you, Del. Carbon capture technology is the question. They're focused on oil companies, but I guess we could roll that out to sort of research efforts as a CSO. You've got to have a take on this, I'm sure. How are we doing in terms of our research efforts on carbon capture technology, broadening it, rolling it out? Are firms thinking about this the right way? Got a quick take on that, Del?
Sure. Yes. So I can tell you that it is my experience, collecting information out there in the world and trying to interact with different academic institutions, that we are definitely working on it from an engineering schools are focused on those technologies. Also, piggybacking on the question earlier about startups, there are numerous startups that are out there looking at carbon capture technologies, and there are some very, very bright and astute venture capitalists that are funding the right technologies to get them brought forward. I will also tell you that we are actively talking about this both inside the oil industry, where we are opening the kimono and sharing at places like methane mitigation summits, right? We're talking about this, but also in other industries where there is emissions, they are looking into carbon capture opportunities to bring into their businesses. So it is, we are approaching it correctly, properly. The challenge again is remains with data and how we are looking at the data the same way and reporting it the same way.
Right, right. So it's all about the metrics here. William, do you have a take on carbon capture, technology, investments, and how companies are approaching that?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at some components of that, namely, what do you do with the actual stuff that's captured, right? So we have invested in some technologies which takes, say, CO2 and converts it into graphene, for instance, which is a commercial product that has lots of value. So we're getting purity of 99.9% graphene, actually. So we're very excited about that. But in general, I admit to you that we've had a little bit of difficulty investing in that particular area. It's an area that's been taken over by the big oil companies. Those are the ones that are backing huge multi-billion type investments. And frankly, that's a little bit too ambitious for our own balance sheet and scope. But yes, I mean, there's tons and tons of money being invested. And I can say that the bigger dollars are really coming from the Chevrons of the world and some others.
Right, right. I'm going to turn to Mark for this one. And keep thanking people for their questions. There's so many coming in, it's hard to keep pace. So this one is there an effort to ensure that students understand the science behind what is sustainable, Mark? And for example, they say, wipes that are flushable does not mean biodegradable or compostable, so compostable. So Mark, do you have a thought on sort of the I think it's about the fundamental science on what sustainability means and how we're focusing on that or not?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, one is, we were talking about educating younger people. And I think what's really amazing these days is the level of knowledge that young people are coming to college campuses with already on sustainability issues. The number of students that we get who started their own nonprofits or their own business efforts in their local hometowns back when they were junior high school students and high school students blows me away and makes me glad I'm the age I'm at now, because I don't think I could have competed with that. But what, we're walking a line as we're thinking about management education, because depending on what program we're teaching in, and I'm primarily teaching in the MBA program, so let me give an example of that. I've got students that have worked for roughly 5 years. They're coming in their late 20s on average. They're looking to go from something they might have been doing before into something new predominantly. And I want to give them a sense of how they're going to be better managers in their career at an inflection point when it's going to be less about asking them to execute a task and see if they can do it, and more about starting to think and act as a leader. And so what does that mean? It means when you face a topic that you may not know anything about, how do you educate yourself about that in a way that makes sure that you are looking at that topic with critical perspective? So do we get into specifically the science around flushable wipes? No. Do we get into, in a class, are we gonna get deep into the science around, say, flywheel battery technology? No. But what we will do is, whether it's a lecture case-based class or it's one of our classes like the SGE Immersion Practicum, where students are working in multidisciplinary teams with real companies to try to solve real problems in the marketplace, we are going to teach our students how to approach a subject they don't know, how to understand all sides of the challenge of a technology or a business or a product or a service, so that they can make intelligent, informed, competitive decisions. And the last thing I would say is take advantage of the university that you're at. We have experts who do the research that the questioner is asking about, and we want to make sure that when the students are asking questions, they're going to subject matter experts and they're figuring out how they become enough of an expert to be able to make good, solid decisions with information.
Fantastic. And in the show notes, you're going to see a link to something called the 2030 Project here at Cornell. If you haven't heard about that, that is an integrating, collaborative, radical collaboration, we call it, on a massive scale for this university, a huge priority. And we're actively involved. We're at the table in terms of the steering committee for that as a College of Business. So wonderful point about the importance of collaboration. Okay, we're coming up to the end of time, and I'm so sorry we can't get to this, but I do want each of you to maybe take 30 seconds for this one, because I think it's really intriguing. What role will AI, artificial intelligence, be playing in sustainability? Del, and I guess it's a futuristic kind of question, specific reference to ChatGPT, but AI, sustainability, Del, and then William, and then Mark, and then we'll close it out.
I will tell you this. There are numerous applications for AI in sustainability that are already existing today. I will give you an example of one, which is really exciting and people would like to hear about. And that is the intersection of AI and satellite technology, where companies are using satellite technology to be able to look from above down below and see what is actually going on down at the ground, and using AI to incorporate the satellite images in with other data analytics to be able to offer up business intelligence to companies to make decisions. That's short and sweet, but it's happening right now, and it's exciting.
It's happening in real time right now.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
William?
It's happening.
I think you might have given an example of this already, William, but go ahead.
Yes, I mean, it's an integral part of everything we do, Dean. And from even the old school drilling, automation, machine learning plus AI is integral part of everything we do. And every single one, that's one of the reasons some of the companies we've invested in chose us, is because we bring these competencies to some of the things they're trying to develop. Our automation really depends a lot on AI. And, that's something that we'll see in every single sector, not only in sustainability going forward.
Exactly. Mark, quick take on AI? And
two things. One is Cornell's already there. Cornell Institute of Computational Sustainability. If folks aren't familiar with it, they should go check it out. Colleagues that are associated with the College of Business, like Carla Gomes, are doing incredible work in this space. There's a lot of pluses. There's also some drawbacks that we got to be careful of, as all of the press around ChatGPT and some of the other chatbot technologies are proving. You can amplify misinformation, you can amplify erroneous things, and I think when it comes to sustainability, we have to be really careful about where the information is coming from and what is getting amplified and considered baseline knowledge.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Dyson affiliated faculty member Carla Gomes, Gomes, look her up, look up the work that she's doing. Cornell leads. Don't ever forget it. Cornell leads in this space. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining. Delfina Govia, William Restrepo, Mark Milstein. You guys are awesome. You make us proud. Thank you for being part of this today. To Marcus, Chris, as well as Nicholas at eCornell, you guys are fantastic. You make it all so easy. Lauren Fitzpatrick and Alumni Affairs and Development, couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Dean.